You know what? I'm really enjoying making these little videos. I have a gigantic ghost hunting episode coming up where I visit the most haunted village in England, which is my biggest adventure yet. But the thing is, these things take time, you know. Sometimes you want to be able to make something quick before you head out to Airfix Club. A bit like when rushing out the door and you ain't got much time to make a sandwich, so you grab a quick protein shake. Which brings me on to this week's sponsor. Nah, I'm just fucking with you. But for reals though, it's good to sometimes make a video about any old thing you can quickly find about the house. So let's start with something I noticed the other day when I were reading the kiddies a bedtime story for bed. Going on a plane. Now at first glance, it might seem like your average story. A family goes to the airport and it's just showing what they do along the way. But it's not until you look a little bit deeper the hidden meanings really start to manifest themselves. So let's start with the dad, Mr. Tripp. Everybody in this book has a name, apart from the dad. Imagine how annoyed you would be if even your kids addressed you by your surname only. To Mr. Tripp, Happy Father's Day. Regards, your child. Let that set the tone for the mood he's in for the entire story. So kicking things off, the family is clearly fucking disorganised right off the bat. If pages had a sound, it'd probably sound something like this.
Can you just give me 2 minutes to pack up this suitcase? I've got so much stuff to fit in here. You're all running around.
Come on, dear. It's not their fault.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do, Dad? What are you going to do?
Ungrateful, spoiled children.
So after an emotionally taxing start to the day, Mr. Tripp's had his entire life force sucked out of him. At first, I thought it was because he now had to do a 3-hour drive to the airport after all the packing, but the granddad's dropping him off, so that's just an early sign that Mr. Tripp's going to be crashing very hard, very soon. Things don't get much better at the airport. Mr. Tripp knocks over his daughter's bags and her stuff goes everywhere. He apologises to her, but from this expression, I can tell he has some sort of PTSD. He doesn't want to set little Rosie off and send her deep into another episode. Like that time a couple of weeks ago where he kept finding bugs with their legs and wings pulled off in her room. At the check-in counter, Mrs. Tripp's big hat blocks Mr. Tripp from the staff, just enough for him to quickly enforce a physical bit of parenting on his annoying son in public. He can just nearly grab little Timmy Tripp's hair and yank his head back, as a friendly reminder to shut the fuck up, but he can't quite reach him. Oh wow, he's happy. I can't believe it, he's actually... Oh no, he's being watched. He's definitely aware he's being watched here, so he has to pretend to be like a fun, happy dad. He doesn't want to be judged for the fact that he has the slowest family in the world. The kids didn't take their watches and belts off at security like instructed, so it's held them all up, and Mrs. Tripp thinks she can get away with having 150 mils of shampoo rather than 100 millilitre. So this results in them being stopped for loads of searches. Mr. Tripp just wants to get to spoons before 11:30 or he'll miss the breakfast. Right, so now we're on the plane. Naturally, the family leave Mr. Tripp to do everything and shove everything up the top, and for a split second he wonders if he can get away with dropping the case on Timmy's annoying little car and smash it to smithereens. I mean, he's got a 9-hour flight ahead of vroom vroom noises, so if you're gonna do that, do it now, Mr. Tripp. But anyway, being the wet rag he is, Mr. Tripp ducks out of that idea. Later, an air hostess reminds him of a girlfriend he had 20 years ago. He's totally besotted by her, and for the first time in a long time, Mr. Tripp fantasises about joining the Mile High Club. But of course, she has absolutely zero interest in this pathetic everyday passenger and barely even acknowledges his little presence. Meanwhile, Timmy spots a UFO. Oh man, finally! Alcohol! Oh man, this is where it's at.
An entire bottle of wine for me, please,
Says Mr. Tripp.
Let's get fucking hammered.
Don't worry, it don't actually say that in the little kiddie book. I did that with my computer editing skills for a joke. But let's be real, it may as well say that. Moving on, it's time for some shitty plane food, and Mrs. Tripp already knows what she's gonna complain about. In the cabin, turns out Rick Astley's driving the plane. Anyway, as the plane lands, Mum and Dad are wasted. They're so fucking trolleyed at passport control that little Rosie Tripp has to step in and sort out the immigration. Mrs. Tripp also finds out that she left her second secret affair phone on the plane, but she thinks,
In some ways, perhaps it'll be good for me to not be having an affair so much. Maybe it's good it got lost.
Then she proceeds to swallow the guilt, because Mr. Tripp has his flaws. Pathetic. whingy, pessimistic, but he has some good qualities, like money and being able to put up a shelf. At baggage claim, those last couple of mini bottles of Smirnoff are now really coursing through Mr. Tripp's veins. To make things worse, Jimmy Tripp is still fucking about with that annoying car, making things almost unbearable for Mr. Tripp.
Oh, Timmy, will you get that thing off the carousel?
Oh, yeah, what are you going to do?
Just wait till we get back to the hotel.
Wanker.
You just bloody wait.
Meanwhile, Rosie Tripp's left unattended with a stranger. Finally, the family are out of the airport, but being the uncultured, entitled British family they are, Mr. Tripp tries to hail a cab and gets confused at the driver ain't immediately running to his beck and call. The only member of the family that's actually taken initiative and got in the car himself is Rosie's toy duck, because even though it's made of rubber, it still collectively has more intelligence than the family does combined. Meanwhile, Mrs. Tripp gives this man a hotel room and number. And that's it. The end. I can see on the back there's more books in the series. Going to the hospital is the next one, so I can only assume that something terrible happens on the way to the hotel. Perhaps Mr. Tripp finally snaps. Anyway, so that's Going on a Plane by Stephen Cartwright. Shout out if you're watching this, Stephen, and I'm sorry. It's actually a really lovely book, and my kid loves it, but I certainly won't be showing her this video till she's old enough to understand the true inner workings and dynamics of a stressed out family who are on the brink of collapse under the cost of living crisis, viral diseases, poverty, and people chucking soup on paintings. Next week, I'll actually be getting on a plane for real, so check back in real soon with a video on what it's like going on a plane as a person with a dog for an head. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Hang on, at the start of this story, they have a baby. Did they just leave it at home? What, is it fighting off burglars and stuff? It'll probably just end up sticking a fork in a plug socket, and that's on them.
Oh, for Christ's sake, can somebody shut that kid up?
What are you going to do, Dad? Go on then, Mr. Tripp. Go on then, big man.